When you think about the condition of our economy, 9/11, 2001, beginning to, as it now appears, emerge from a recession. Nobody knew it at that point, quite frankly, but our country took a terrible shock, a terrible impact to our country and our economy. If you would have asked any economist in the world at the end of September of 2001, I'm going to give you 3% growth for the next 12 months, they all would have raised their hand and said, I'll take it. And so when you consider the challenges, I think, that we've been facing for the last really 2 years, the energy crisis that we had on our hands when we entered into office in the winter of 2000 and 2001, the recession that was being handed to us in 2001, the 9/11 that I've already talked about, the corporate scandals that we all are aware of, the West Coast port strike that we had to deal with, which is where about 20% of our imports come into our economy, that the president had to take some decisive action on. And so when you kind of think about all of those challenges, and then you think about 3% growth over the last 12 months through the third quarter of 2002, when you think about inflation totally under control, when you think about productivity at 5.6%, a 30-year high for the year 2000, when you think about housing starts in the month of December, this last month, the highest level since 1986, when you think about consumer spending continuing to decline, when you think about the consumers, the after-tax real income of the consumer increased in the first 9 months of 2002, 5.9%, real after-tax income of the household. So the consumer is still active, still participating, in large part because of, obviously, one thing I didn't mention was the low interest rates, the lowest interest rates we've had.
While the economy has grown 3% roughly over the last year, employment has not grown. Another factor of some importance is that important sectors of the economy, particularly those that were the top of the boom, they are still shrinking in a number of cases, particularly if you look at nominal output, because these are industries that have rapidly falling prices. If you look at real output, the situation is stronger. It's also true that this recovery sectorally looks a little bit different than a number of others. The consumer has been quite strong. Residential construction has been quite strong. Capital goods are lagging more than they normally do in most recoveries. Small business in the U.S. has been doing quite well. Not enormously well, but quite well. Big business, particularly capital goods producers, have been the slow end of the train.
Coming out of this economic slowdown, most CEOs understand the leverage on productivity that's going to occur. However, the risk-reward factors are a little bit more conservative than I've ever seen in my business career, which is a very nice way of saying the majority of CEOs I talk to across America are actually going to be conservative in their budgeting for this year, especially on employment, even on capital spending, until they see their own business turn up. Now, Chad and some of the people on this panel are the exception, including myself, but I think you're going to see the economy turn up first with business profits turn up, and I think the last 2 years business has done a much better job on productivity, getting rid of the excesses, unlikely to see the layoffs that we've seen before, and as their profits start to occur, then I think they'll spend 2 to 4 months later. So I think it's almost a show-me economy from a CEO perspective. The consumer, as you said, has held up remarkably strong.
And the first 3 quarters of 2002, we saw a very steady improvement, but that did not continue into the fourth quarter. And so the real question now is, what are we going to see going into this year? If we look at the fundamentals as we track every major region in the world, we see the potential for improved GDP in every region and a small improvement in the overall globe as a cause of that. And quite frankly, the change in the value of the U.S. dollar is going to help U.S. manufacturing.
What you have these days are little mini recessions, and everybody trains on a couple of numbers in one quarter, and they say, oh my goodness, things are getting bad because the purchasing manager's index isn't good, or this number isn't good, or what have you. But then when you get on the backside of the quarter, just as Secretary Evans says, well, my goodness, we're doing not so bad. So the only thing that's necessary for the United States economy to really shift into high gear, in my opinion, is number one, business investment to resume, which, as John Chambers said, is related to profitability. It's been the missing component in the mix. and secondarily, a resolution of a lot of the uncertainties in the international sector. So we view things as okay, and that they will probably get better as a function of the improved cash flows of business and as the international situation resolves itself. The missing ingredient in the economy is business investment. And business, people forget, is a highly concentrated entity in terms of investment decisions. 3,000 companies in the United States account for 70% of all business investment. And 5,000 companies account probably for 80 to 85%. So when you talk about business confidence and business investment, what you have to do is to convince those 5,000 boardrooms to go forward. If you're a big company, you probably won't until you see demand. But the real engine of economic prosperity is always small and medium-sized business, and they are very capable of being stimulated by things like accelerated depreciation or lower equity costs or dividend exclusion from taxes. And whether it starts by the stimulus or it happens by its own volition, when business investment comes back to the table, you'll see growth rates like John Chambers talked about, provided there's not a horrible international situation underway.
I know that I know how important I feel that global safety and global security is to economic growth and economic security. I mean, it's certainly true in America. I mean, the two are absolutely interlinked. You can't have economic growth and economic security without national security and without homeland security. So it's very important to in order to bring risk down and lower the risk in decision making of investment, that those making those decisions feel some safety and security.
Clearly what we see in this period of time with the uncertainty, we see flat order cancellations. We saw order cancellations in the fourth quarter because if there is a major global instability, nobody knows exactly where things are going to be. We see because the economy's been down, a number of our customers don't have the cash available, and so they're just watching things much, much closer than they would have 2 or 3 years ago, and I believe that's a factor. And so I think until we see some resolution or some settling here, it's going to be difficult to see any kind of a robust recovery at all.
Education and infrastructure may be the two most important long-term decisions we make. Infrastructure, both in the electrical system, in the highways, but also in the internet, broadband to every American home. And our education system, we made good progress, but we aren't moving fast enough. And I'm worried with the slowdown and the pressure on states. The states may actually go backwards on their investment in education.
This is an economic growth package with the idea of creating the conditions for this country and the world, quite frankly, to be more competitive. And you know, the big elements of it, Fred mentioned the small business owner being the driver, and he is. And you know, the other side keeps attacking as a tax cut for the rich. Well, you know, they're talking about those in the highest income tax bracket. Do you know that 79% of the benefits go to small business owners, individuals that own companies that employ people? Small business owners employ over 50% of the people in the country. And so that's who they're attacking. They're attacking the small business owners, the economic engine of our economy.